I'd like to call this edition of the Santa Barbara Airport Commission to order, August 19th, 2009. And our first order of business is the roll call.
Karen Kahn,
Present.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
John Clark,
Here.
Patricia Griffin, Dolores Johnson,
Here.
Kirk Martin,
Here.
Scott Tracy.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. Item number 15, I'd like to defer till September's meeting.
Okay, thank you. And this is the time for public comment. Do we have any speaker slips?
No, I have no speakers.
All right. And moving on to the notices that the Lease Review Subcommittee meeting scheduled for Thursday, August 13th was canceled. That on Thursday, August 13th at 4 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. And finally, that the General Aviation Subcommittee met on Thursday, August 19th at 5:30 p.m. in the Airport Administration Building, 601 Firestone Road, Santa Barbara, California. That brings us to the consent calendar. Does anyone have any desire to consider anything on the consent calendar separately? Do I hear a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Motion to accept.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moved and seconded. All, looks like it passes. Moving on. Come to liaison reports, and I see our distinguished liaison from the city of Goleta is here. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have anything really to report to you, although I do want to talk to Karen about a few items that have come to my attention that are very small. I just want to say, you have very short meetings.
Thank you. We consider that a great compliment.
The city council last night started at 1:30 in the afternoon. We got a 10-minute break. We had 30 minutes for dinner and a working meeting while we ate, and another 10-minute break, and we closed at 11:15 last night. So consider
is that
yourself
classified
blessed
as
with a
a
very
short
efficient
meeting?
staff. And I suspect that's why your agenda is so short, as she takes care of everything.
Yes, we thank her profusely for her wonderful abilities to keep us on time and moving forward.
Well, the reports in the newspapers about New Goleta City Hall are fairly accurate, and we will not be making any decisions anytime soon. But it's an interesting subject, and now that the word is out, I expect we will be hearing proposals from all over the map.
There's that hangar over there.
I'll tell the manager. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to commission matters. We have the General Aviation Subcommittee report. Commissioner Clark?
Well, the General Aviation Subcommittee did meet this evening before this meeting, and we discussed several items, the major one being the process for the renting of the T-hangars, and we discussed it, and we are going to recommend that we bring it to the full commission next month in September. I think the leaning of the subcommittee was to leave the process as it exists, but again, we'll take it to this full commission and discuss that. And that was really about it. There were some other more minor discussions, but nothing.
The GA landing piece.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Too much thinking about that one. GA landing fees, which is an interesting discussion, and there was some wonderful study done on this. I have to, again, commend staff for that. The where do we want to? Is this just a discussion of it, or are we looking for a motion, or at this point?
No, I think at this point, we're just looking for you to a brief report from the
Okay.
subcommittee, and then we'll put it on the agenda next month. Will you be ready?
Next month? Okay.
Next month for the full discussion of.
Okay,
commission.
the subject of general aviation landing fees, and when you say it that way, people's heart rate goes up a little. What we're talking about is charging a landing fee for aircraft using the airport in basically a commercial use. Because at the moment, they're not really paying their share of the wear and tear on the airport, to put it simply. Airlines do, freight companies do. And as it stands now, we're looking at assessing aircraft of over 10,000 pounds, which cuts out most private GA piston sorts of aircraft. And we have worked on a process for the FBOs to do the collection of the fees to keep it orderly and neat. I think it's a very beneficial idea. There's some fairly serious income in it for the airport to support the general operation of the airport without putting any huge fees on anybody. The numbers are fairly small per flight. I'm much in favor of it.
Okay.
So we had basically asked to have this presented to us next month or
Yes.
whenever it's
Right.
appropriate as an item for the full
Next month.
commission to.
And then have a full discussion so that all commissioners
Right,
could weigh in.
exactly.
Thank you. Which brings us to our administrative reports.
That would be you.
That's me. The item before you at this time is the fiscal year 2009 financial report, the end-of-year report. And I made just a couple of slides because I was anticipating the year-end report that Karen was going to present at the end, so I shortened this one substantially. But the first slide, I just wanted to remind you just a little bit of when we put the budget together last December and January. We were aware that 2007 and 2008 had seen record high fuel costs for the airlines, and we knew that we were going to be impacted with capacity reductions that the airlines are going to make. And those reductions would impact number of seats available and more than likely number of airline passengers, which has the domino effect of affecting our concessions, parking, and rent-a-car activities as well. Then shortly after the budget started in July, September, we had the economic crisis that continues today, and tourism has declined not only just in Santa Barbara, but nationally and internationally. And commercial industrial tenants, some of ours have been affected somewhat, not to a great degree, but we have been impacted some. But with that in mind, we did meet our budget. Our revenues came in at $13,061,000, which is 2% greater than what we had projected our revenues to be. But to put it in perspective, it is 5.7% below what we collected in fiscal year 2008. Airline terminal revenues were impacted. Parking decreased 10.5%, and concessions decreased 39.7%. Now, part of the concessions, recall, we moved the gift shop in two different directions and then put it back. Their revenues each month since they went back into the lobby have grown. In fact, they're doing really well, and we're really pleased for that. The restaurant upstairs also had revenues less than we anticipated, and we have been working closely with the contractor SSP America on the operation, how the food's presented, pricing, advertising, marketing, all kinds of things with the restaurant, because we really want them to do well. We want to serve our travelers and have good food and beverage available to them as well. Rent-a-cars, there were less contracts issued through the rent-a-car companies, but our revenues from them met budget because of our minimum annual guarantee. And luckily, the rent-a-cars have not requested that we renegotiate that. We wouldn't be real pleased to do that at all. Then on the expenditure side, you'll recall at the mid-year, we requested that our staff be very cautious and conservative on expenditures and to really think about it beforehand. And luckily, we came in under budget by 8%, and I'm really pleased with that. Our total expenditures were $11.8 million. It was just slightly more than we did in 2008 at 1.5. And you can see the areas where we were below just almost in every category except allocated cost. They came right in on target. Equipment, the majority of that was computer program replacement, and the city established a new policy that in pretty much unless it's broken, we're going to keep it going for a while. Special projects, you'll recall, that's our shuttle operation with parking, and it too came in under budget. And overall supplies and services at 15% below. That's really significant. That, in your report, you have a more detailed spreadsheet, and you also have a listing of our projected preliminary reserves. Once again, all of the city required reserves are fully funded. And at this point, it appears that we would have additional money in reserves above policy. So I'd be available for any questions that you might have.
Well, I had just one observation. I think I mentioned it last year. The report is great, thanks. On the expense side, it'd probably look better for everybody if negative variances had negatives in front of them.
Bessie, where are you? Yes. Thanks, Commissioner.
Looks that much better on the expense side.
I remember the finance director projecting that our economic slowdown was going to continue possibly into numerous years, 2-3 years possibly, because of the state of the state.
Yes.
So this surplus, what is the idea how that monies will be used or protected for that possibility?
Right. When we do our budget annually, we'll look at our revenues and see, try to target those once again. Then we'll look at our operational expenses, and the goal is to keep the operational expenses consistent with the revenues that we're projecting. The monies that we generate over and above operations are available. If we fall short, we could use reserves to cover operational. Generally, those reserves above policy are used for capital improvement. And certainly with the terminal project going on, and the airport does have a touch of money that we're supposed to supply for that. That's where those funds would be targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But we are cautious, and this year will be very conservative on the budget
And
preparation.
I noticed the equipment was down a large percentage. Do you foresee that you won't have any major equipment purchases needed in the next year that would tap into that reserve? We're looking good on vehicles and other equipment.
We have a couple of items that we have included in our airport program, thank you, request to FAA for AIP funds. A new sweeper for the airfield. Trace, what was the other, was that it?
I think the sweep was the only equipment.
And so we would go to, that's eligible, and certainly something that if we can get the feds to use our AIP money for rather than our own dollars, that's what we would do. Staffing, our other equipment, though, I think we're pretty much done, and we also participate in a program through the city where we set aside money for replacement of those, of all equipment that we have. And on an annual basis, certain pieces of equipment come up, we take a look at it, we meet with Motor Pool, decide which ones to replace and go forward. This equipment line item would be for just about anything that was not in a planned program. Or it, like I said too, we held the money for the the PC replacement. And that would go forward again to probably 2010.
The numbers look good.
Thank you. It was a real effort on the part of everyone in the department to care about what we were doing and recognizing the situation that we had. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, it looks like that moves us on to the passenger facility charge application under administrative reports.
Good, good, good. This is a recommendation for Airport Commission to approve and impose and use passenger facility charge application to finance a portion of the cost of the Airline Terminal Improvement Program. A little background on the passenger facility charge, or PFC program, was authorized by Congress back in 1990. It's for commercial service airports. General aviation airports do not have PFCs. And it allowed airports with generally large capital projects to assess, to impose the PFC fee. And it's, as I said, it's to fund FAA-approved projects. So it could be used for the airfield, it can be used for the airline terminal, it could be used for design, it could be used for planning. Whatever is allowed under the Airport Improvement Program guidelines, PFCs can also be used for that same purpose. The fees range from $1 to a total of $4.50. That fee hasn't been changed since 2003, I believe, was the last time they adjusted it. The airlines collect the fee on your ticket, your airline ticket, and they get to keep 12 cents for administrative fee of the total dollar that's collected. And the fee is assessed on your ticket for the first 2 enplaning airports and the last 2 enplaning airports. There's an example, I believe, on the next slide. Vanna. If you just consider that every airport that's listed here assesses a fee. So if you go out of Santa Barbara, the fee will be assessed on the segment from Santa Barbara. Salt Lake City will also get a PFC. Oklahoma City will not get a PFC. On the return trip, Oklahoma City still doesn't get a PFC. Salt Lake City gets it, Santa Barbara gets it. That's the way it's applied on your airline ticket. We have had, since 2003, a PFC at $4.50. As soon as we were allowed to go to $4.50, we did. Before that, it was at $3. So the fee charge isn't changing any with this application. I mentioned earlier the eligible projects, safety, security, capacity, even noise reduction, and larger airports have air carrier competition plans that are eligible for that. It does require that we meet with the airlines to discuss it. They can't stop it. They get to comment, but they don't overrule it, and then we submit the application to FAA. So as I said, we began collections more than 10 years ago. We've had numerous projects, and through the current application that we have, we've collected about $14.5 million in PFC revenues to be used on the airport. This particular PFC application is for, next, thank you. This application will be, once again, $4.50. The dollar amount doesn't change. It's for a portion of the debt service on the Airline Terminal Improvement Project. The non-leasable area of the terminal and the infrastructure part of it is eligible for this. We are looking to collect $19.945 million in PFCs over 30 years. This slide shows the funding sources for the terminal. Bonds paid by rents is $27.3 million. Bonds paid by PFCs is $19.9, and then we have some PFCs in the works right now at $1.5 million and $12.9 in FAA grants. There's also a touch of airport money in there. It'll be used for partial debt service. We're looking for the charge effective date. The first time that we'll collect PFCs for this particular application would be in April 2010. And we met with the air carriers generally by phone. We invited them to come. They all said they would, but then they called in. And I have already received support letters from SkyWest for United and Delta, and Horizon has also submitted a letter of support. U.S. Air has verbally supported it. The letter hasn't come yet, but they have supported us for this application. Is that it? Oh, so at this time, we're asking Airport Commission to recommend approval of this particular application for $19 million, and that for the purpose of the debt service for the airline terminal project.
You're estimating 19.9 over 30 years, correct?
Yes.
If the commission is to approve this, are we approving this PFC for 30 years?
You're approving the application for the PFC for 30 years.
So is that locked in at the 450 for the 30 years then, or is that changeable?
If Congress changes the maximum amount on the fee that we could, and that's been discussed, as you know, either $6, $7, whatever, then we would amend the application and increase the fee to be commensurate and therefore collect it faster. And any monies that we collect over and above the debt service, should that happen, would be available for other capital improvement projects.
Are there any airports that handle commercial like this that don't charge a PFC?
Yes, there are some. LAX for a long time didn't collect a PFC. They are now, but there are some airports who don't.
Thank you.
Why? I'm not sure.
For the life of me, I can't figure that out either, and that's why I was asking the questions.
Yes.
I have a little question about the mechanics of this. My understanding is that the fee will continue to be charged. We are just requesting to apply to actually have some of those fees returned to us for these specific purposes. If we didn't fill out this application,
Then we would not have a fee.
Okay. So
It's very specific, unlike a lot of other things. This particular one, once you file an application, the funds cannot be used for anything else but this. And then once, if you don't continue it, then it expires and the fee goes away.
Okay, so if we were not to approve this, there would be no fee attached to the passenger tickets out of Santa Barbara, and hence we would be eligible for, obviously, no money that hadn't been collected.
No passenger facility charge. There'd still be a ticket tax.
Right.
Right. That's correct.
Any other questions?
I was curious after you asked, is the time limit 30 years just a projection for what would be collected, or is that actually attached to the application as a time limit?
It's
Do
in-
these time out after a period of time, or is 30 years?
You have to, in the application, you have a commencement date and an expiration date.
Oh, okay.
And I just did the debt service amortization schedule, are the dates that I used. And the bonds that we sold were for 30 years. So that's why I put that in.
Okay, thank you.
Forgive me. We started this in 1998, and so when we asked for that application, was that a specific time frame on that application? And that time frame was just through this year?
No, actually, we've had 5 applications over the last 10 years. And the first 4 have been completed. The work's been completed, the money's been collected and been applied. We have a current application that we should accept all of the money or receive all of the approved amount by March of 2010. Then it expires, this one takes its place, and it continues with a new application.
And this one would span how many years?
If my projections are correct, and they're pretty conservative, it would still go 30 years.
So we wouldn't have to ask for another application for 30 years?
That's correct.
Wow.
It's a
What-
big commitment
what
to do $19
changed?
million.
That we had to have it 5 times in the last few years, and now we can do it for 30.
What changed was the project.
Okay.
And the collection amount. For example, one year we had an application for GA ramp down by Atlantic, and it was a $2 million project.
Got it. Okay. Thank
that
you.
make sense?
It was a little foggy there. I wasn't sure that we were applying for the application for one specific project, or if you got the money and you applied it to a specific project. Now it's clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions? Okay.
I would make a motion that we accept the request to for the PFC.
I
Okay.
heartily second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion regarding the motion that the commission recommend approval of the 2009 PFC application fee in the amount of $19,945,000 to finance a portion of the debt service for the airline terminal improvement project?
I just think we would be foolish not to.
Okay.
Would be a
All
problem.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The
Thank you.
recommendation carries.
Have to sell cupcakes or something.
Yeah. Sure be back to us
And a
next
car
month.
Those GA landing fees.
Or we'll be kept here until we vote yes.
All right, that looks like that brings us to the,
The
we
director's
have the
report?
director's report, or do we have the airport website? Administrative reports.
I think you're in the minutes. It's the,
Yeah,
where the director's reports.
I'm in the minutes, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. Director's report. It's a long day.
It has.
Not much sleep last night.
Okay. Again, as usual, I'll pick out several items to point out, and if you have any questions on any of the others, please feel free to ask. Our passenger count for July was down 11.3% compared to July of 2008. This is not surprising. I mean, we were expecting that our passenger count would start going down with the economy, and it has. The year-to-date, we're down about 11.9%. So we'll just have to ride this out, and eventually it will start going back up again. Under air service, I didn't want to comment on American Eagle, but as you know, Allegiant has announced that they are terminating service as of September 3rd. I think there are several reasons why the service wasn't very successful. One of their corporate planners felt that our market here on the South Coast really, the Allegiant service wasn't really compatible with the kind of service that they expected for Las Vegas. I don't know if that makes any sense. Plus, I think also offering the same service in Santa Maria, and it's very, very successful up there, that you can only have that kind of service in a small market area, I think, in one place. They also mentioned that it was not really very successful in Monterey, and they see it that the populace is fairly similar as the south coast of Santa Barbara County. And there are probably a million other reasons, but we're sorry to see the passengers go. We could certainly use the passenger count. So,
Do we have any hope of a replacement service to Las Vegas, or getting U.S. Airways to bring it back, or?
we are beating every bush, let's put it that way. I don't know that we'll be able to convince anybody to pick it up, but we are talking to several different airlines. So.
A question, the Allegiant service was kind of strangely timed for the leisure gambling market, whereas I think the U.S. Airways service was much more of a businessman connecting on to other cities, so that you had a little bit more reason for the business person to use it as opposed to the leisure
Right.
traveler. So I guess the question is, did the departure of U.S. Airways out of the market, in your estimation, equate with we can't compete with a big airplane, and might they be interested in it because of the back to the business traveler and the number of people that, did they have a decent load factor
Well, they
before
were,
Allegiant showed
They
up?
were pulling down their hub at Las Vegas in general. I went on the Las Vegas website, and I think I counted 16 flights a day, which is not very many for U.S. Air out of Las Vegas. And we were just part of that pulling down their hub. But you're right, Allegiant was very focused on the leisure market. You couldn't really connect out of Las Vegas if you flew on Allegiant without really wasn't their intention. So we are trying to figure out a way to, or see if an airline would be interested in serving it, and it probably would not be an airline that was kind of as narrowly focused as Allegiant. That would be where you could connect on.
Yeah, or even just if you had any business to do there, trying to get there at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, and, necessitates a hotel room so that you've immediately got people.
Or you have to come back 3 days later, or leave.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, it wasn't very conducive to that. It just didn't really work at this time in this market.
It's interesting that their passenger count almost doubled from January to July, and yet still their business model seems to not work.
Right. They had a 150-seat airplane. That's a lot of seats to fill. When American, the mainline airline, operated out of here in the early 1990s, they operated MD-80 to Dallas. And they had to end up, over time, they went to Long Beach, here, Long Beach, Dallas, here, Bakersfield, Dallas. It's a big airplane to fill up in a really small market. So I think that's the case with Allegiant's aircraft. Plus, you have people that can leave out of Santa Maria for the same type of trip. So
In the passenger count that you said was off 11.9%, is there a comparative figure across California or similar demographics?
I don't really have one across California. I know that I think the FAA forecast is somewhere nationwide for 2009 to be between 7.5 and 8% down. So when you consider all the airports across the country, some are going to take really big hits. But we have noticed that while Orange County Airport last year was taking double-digit decreases in their passengers, that has really moderated in the last few months. So I'm not sure if that's kind of a very, 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 very early sign of recovery or what. Or if they got in, did they get
Southwest
JetBlue or
and JetBlue.
Southwest? Yeah. So that will pump it right up. So who knows? It's a crazy business. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to point out is our website is online, and you're welcome to take a look at it. We're not making a big announcement for about 60 days to kind of flesh out things that need to be fixed, and it definitely needs adding some meat to it and that sort of thing. But it is up, and I invite you to take a look, and we really would appreciate your comments and suggestions.
I know I was looking at it today, and one of the things, I may not have looked far enough, but I know the schedule that I've always used a lot was the listing by city destination and all the flights that go there. And what I was seeing was the one that kind of listed everything that's going in chronological order, which was a little strange. Is that
Harder to-
previous style still going to be there?
They're working on it, but it won't be exactly the same style. But they will be working on trying to let you manipulate it so that you can order it by, city or by flight or.
Because that was very handy, something that you could actually print that had
Sure.
all the flights to Los Angeles, all the flights to San Francisco, and then you flipped it over and you had the other.
And what they're working on also is, right now, it doesn't print all on one page, and they're working on trying to get it to do that. So there's some kind of technical things they're still working on.
Yeah, because actually the last one did. I mean, you just actually had to flip the page over, but we got them to center it on the page so you could actually print front to
Right.
back. And it was very handy for someone to have the schedule to Santa Barbara,
Right.
which I think is a factor in trying to use the airport. If you have a handy reference, you're much more likely than if it's a big hassle to figure out where the flights and are there enough to go out and come back. So
Well, and the schedule is the most hit page on the website, so
Yeah, so I
getting it right is
vote to bring
important.
back the one they had, because it was very clear and easy to use.
Okay, well, I'll pass that on, and I know that they are working, both Terry and Lynn know that your comments about the schedule, and I think are trying to get this one to be in the same or similar format. So,
Thanks.
any other questions on that? The self-serve fueling project is actually doing well. We got the Coastal Commission approval on the zoning change, or the correction in the zoning, last Thursday, and MAG Aviation was here this week
Yes.
to file their master application with the city planning department. So they're beginning the process. And
I was curious what continued indefinitely to consent review really was meant to convey there
where,
at the Architectural Board of Review.
oh, there were comments that are, the ABR made, and what they want is the applicant, when they're ready to come back with those changes, they'll just be on the consent calendar
Okay.
of ABR. That is kind of a weird way to word it, though. I'm sure that's how they word it, so that's how we word it.
It was.
Maximum obfuscation.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody really knows what's going on. Let's see. On the terminal project, we continue with the soil conditioning. It's quite an operation out there. If you haven't been over there to take a peek, I invite you to do that. So things are coming along. We've added more signage. So hopefully that will help people get around better and figure out where things are now that things have moved around. But I think things have kind of calmed down, and the contractor's working behind the fence, and hopefully things will continue in that vein. And then probably in October-ish, Emma Construction should start construction on the main building, and the current contractor, Lash Construction, should be done with this phase of work. So we're making progress.
Karen, on that, how is the volunteers working out?
Oh, Hazel.
The ambassadors are doing well. We had Rebecca scheduled a meeting with them in July, and they came. All of them came in. The enthusiasm of being at the terminal was just kind of rewarding to hear them talk about how much fun they have, how they feel helpful. One lady said, when I took my jacket off because it was a warm day at the terminal, she had more people approach her. And so I'm not sure if they're all taking their jackets off or if they are just out there, but they're all having a good time. We certainly are still taking applications. If you know of anyone who would like to volunteer, please send them our way, because we have spots that we can fill. But it's going really well. It's
gotten
been well
comments?
received by the airlines, by the TSA, especially both of them,
How about
everybody.
passengers? Are they commenting on it at all?
I think through the ambassadors, and Rebecca can speak more to this, but yes, they definitely appreciate it.
Great.
And it's as though they hesitate to ask a question, but you can tell when someone's confused or they can't find the men's room or the ladies' room, or where gate 8 and 9 might be. So they're just really good about approaching people, asking if they can help, and also they're very good about giving us feedback about what's going on at the terminal and out front, so that we can take that information, then tweak policies or procedures or services. So, yeah, it's going very well. We're really pleased.
Are we posting it on the website for people to see that we need volunteers?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on the web. Definitely.
Thank you.
Call Rebecca.
Are any of the postings that you see on, I guess it's Channel 18, with the offerings for job openings, even though it's a volunteer position? I'm just wondering, that
Don't
might,
think we're doing that.
Not currently, but we can check that out.
doesn't pay. No, it does pay. They get a jacket, and they get, do they get,
Parking pass.
they get a parking pass. Hey, that's a good deal.
It's valuable.
Very
It
valuable.
has a value.
Priceless.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really do take ownership. I mean, I'm so pleased that when something is amiss or they think that something isn't being handled just in a customer service friendly way, they bring it to the attention of Rebecca and Hazel, so that we can follow up on it. So it's like another set of eyes out there, and someone who's not here every day, like we are, where you tend to kind of take things for granted, or you don't really see the things that someone who's not here as much. So they do a great job.
Does our comment card over there have a place to comment on the ambassador? Or
No,
might
actually
that
it
be in
doesn't.
addition, were you helped by an ambassador? Any comments about that?
Good point.
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Write that
Thank
down.
you. I am.
Okay, the Quick Turn rental car facility or maintenance facility is coming right along, and it should be complete by end of this month.
September 4th is
Oh,
the
that's right.
the tentative date.
So things are coming along. Hazel's working with the rental cars to, which is probably a bigger challenge, to try and get the maintenance responsibilities for the facility sorted out and get our agreements for that going. And but we'll get there, and it's really a nice facility. The solar or photovoltaic panels that are the carport and then on the building, it's quite impressive. It'll be really interesting after it's operational for a while to see how much power it really generates for the facility. So
Does the new turn facility mean that we will have more space at the current rental car areas for other activities, or they will just,
no, we just took away all their area for the construction, and the area for the ready cars that we're giving them is smaller than what they had. So yeah, it's unfortunately it doesn't, but it does take their washing and stuff like that, which was a stormwater issue for us, to a facility where it's done properly and keeps us in compliance.
there wasn't any thought to doing what, of course, most airports are now doing, which is taking all their rental cars with a single van service off the airport to a central facility?
No, the rental cars felt that we weren't big enough here at this time, maybe some point in the future, but right now it didn't really make sense with the volume of traffic that we have. So that concludes my remarks, and if you have questions about anything else, I'd be happy
A
to.
question, I remember last month there were some problems with the turnstiles at exiting of the parking, long-term parking or short-term parking. Did that get worked out?
I'll let you answer that.
Passing the buck.
As I say, when I'm asked about that, today I have not gotten any complaints. It has been a real ordeal, and we had difficulties with the hardware of the equipment, the software of the equipment, the DSL line that fed the equipment. I don't know if there was anything that they had that didn't go wrong. And we have replaced equipment and had staff from the equipment company, Amano, here on site working week after week. So far, as I said, today I didn't get complaints, and I think we're on a road to getting it managed. But it has taken a lot of effort to do that, just on their part, because they were trying to figure out why isn't it working. Because Lot 2 was put in Thanksgiving last year and had no problems, quite frankly. So we didn't anticipate that we would have complete chaos at the terminal. But it's working today.
Tomorrow?
Any other questions?
I was curious about the contract to Innova Aviation for specialized air service development support. What the nature of that contract was going to be.
It's air service consultant.
Right, it's our air service consultant,
Is this the market study?
Kevin Shore.
service?
Kevin Shore, and he works on presentations that we make to airlines for service and keeps in contact, right. It's our previous contract, he worked with a different firm, and when he switched firms, we switched to
I
the
see. Okay.
the contract.
Used to be Trans Systems.
I see that our city liaison, Councilman House, is here, so if you,
Thanks, Chair Khan. I just wanted to ask a question, if I could, of the director, and it goes to a little conversation that we were having with a constituent by email about the youth on the shuttle. And perhaps you just take a minute, Karen, and explain the Class B license issue. I think it was one that was worthy of mention, and maybe we need to find some way to communicate to the public some of the comments that you had made back to the one that was the woman who was concerned or upset about the situation that happened. But I think it'd be good for us to discuss it, and then maybe as we see some resolution to that in the future, we can celebrate that. Would you take a minute and do that, please? Okay, very good.
This week particularly, we had an incident where passengers that included child or children under the age of 12 were parking in our long-term lot 2 and were attempting to board the shuttle bus to go to the terminal, and the driver would not take them, and his explanation was it was policy, and really what the reason was, and unfortunately the driver didn't carry out AMCO, who's our parking operator, what their directions are for this situation. In order to carry children in a shuttle operation, children under 12, you have to have, the driver has to have a Class B license. And a Class B license, while it's not impossible to get, it is more rigorous to get than a regular, I guess, Class C driver's license that we all have. It involves drug and alcohol testing. You have to have a medical. If you have a traffic violation off-duty, the penalty and the fine you pay are more severe than for that same offense if you have a Class C license. So if I'm speeding and I get a ticket, I will get points on my driving record, more double points than what I would get if I had a Class C license, and I'd have to pay a double fine. So not everybody wants to have, runs to have a Class B license. And AMCO has tried to hire Class B drivers, and they have 4 of them. They have 1 every shift. We have 2 shuttles that go between the remote parking lot and the terminal, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every 10 minutes. And one of those drivers is a Class B driver, but the other one has a Class C license. So what they're supposed to do, if children or passengers with children under 12 need to be shuttled and the driver has a Class C license, he's just supposed to call the other shuttle driver to come on over and pick up the passengers and take them to the terminal. So there shouldn't be any problem. If the Class B driver happens to be the one that picks up the family, there's no problem with that. We have talked with AMCO and try to ask them to intensify their efforts to get Class B licensed drive more of them, so that we have, it would be ideal to have them all be Class B. But I know that even on our own staff, we did have a couple pieces of equipment where it required a Class B driver, and it was hard to convince. We needed 2 or 3 employees to do it. It was hard to convince them to do it because of the responsibilities that it entails to have that license. I mean, it's pretty onerous. So anyway, AMCO is working on trying to get more Class B drivers for the shuttles, but children can be transported by shuttle from the remote lot to the terminal, back and forth, and like I said, they will call for a driver to take them if the one that...
And I think that really goes to it, and that is that the drivers themselves have been informed clearly by their employer and by us that they're to make those accommodations, and we do always have a Class B on there so a family doesn't get stranded.
Correct.
All right, great. Well, good.
And in fact, the Class B van driver will ask the family when they take them over to the terminal, when are you coming back? and the time, so that they make sure that they have someone with a Class B license over there at the time that they come back.
All right, that's just really great. Thank you very much, and thanks.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just wondering, since there's most likely a fair bit of turnover in drivers and maybe training is a little variable, if it might be worthwhile trying to post something either just outside the door of the van that advises people in as simple a terms as possible, and maybe have a cell number they could call if they were maybe having an issue communicating with the driver and understanding what the issue is.
That's super
'Cause I would imagine it could be rather stressful for somebody who's over there who's got, who feels like they don't have
Sure.
much time.
Right.
And get that
To
sort
be
of thing
arguing with
resolved.
somebody about,
Who may not be fully trained, or or maybe there's even some sort of a barrier in understanding.
yeah, and actually, we probably could put signs up also at the shuttle stops.
Yes.
And on the website, maybe just as traveler frequent ask
Yeah.
questions now that it's been publicized.
We did put, I did put a very short little blurb or explanation on EdHat, because that's where the discussion was going on at a fast and furious pace today. I think every 20 minutes, my staff was bringing me in with, new comments and new, wondering about this or that. So anyway, like I said on there, it's not our intent to make travel more unpleasant than it already is.
Well, as you know, no matter how much time you leave, there's somehow always, is there an extra stress factor getting
Sure.
to the airport?
I mean, you're stressed out to start with. Before you even leave your house, you're stressed.
Well, the other thing we might do on the website is encourage people, particularly if it's a family, which I'm assuming a lot of people do anyway, which is to drop their family and their luggage at the terminal first and then take the car to the shuttle. So it's so much easier than trying to drag your luggage on and off.
But, as I was reading the comments, if you're a single parent or a single,
Oh,
or
certainly, there are
just a
times it
parent
doesn't
or
work.
an adult traveling with a child, it doesn't work. People were saying, would you expect me to leave my children over at the terminal?
Well, we're trying to not encourage more traffic at the terminal, given the way the traffic loop is these days.
Yeah, no, the way it was handled was incorrect, and actually, it was not the case. It was contrary to what the procedures that were set out, and it was unfortunate. I feel, badly that the passenger and their family had to experience that. But hopefully, we'll get that fixed, and we'll get more Class B drivers, which is really what
It
would help.
sounded like a perfect educational opportunity for the employee.
Yes, they
but
got
we-
educated.
That's nicely put.
And I take it that you haven't had any problems today?
Other than response.
Yeah.
I was going to add, maybe as a precaution, in case you run into a situation where there is not a Class B person available, even though it's the company you're contracting with, their responsibility for that, to maybe have a Plan B of someone on the field that they could go to so that customer service is carried out, because it's going to be a rare situation anyway, if that were to happen. Just throwing out ideas. We have security that have to have Class B.
I think if it got desperate, we could probably have our security come over, and we
Yeah.
have had at times security transport passengers for one reason or another,
Yeah,
many times.
good.
But I do think that the system will work okay, and AMCO will ensure that it does.
Are there any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Oh, but one comment.
Yes,
In
we,
1939, Congress established this day, August 19th, as National Aviation Day, so we should be grateful for that.
1939.
Yes,
1939.
thank you.
Isn't this also a birthday?
Orville Wright's birthday.
All right.
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
Celebrating
Orville.
National Aviation Day on your way home or something.
I will.
Good.
We'll just fly on home.
My great-grandmother saw the Wright brothers fly.
Wow.
Cool.
And my great-grandmother was 16 years old when she saw the Wright brothers fly, so she was old enough to laugh at them like everybody else. And she saw them in Denver, the Mile High City.
Wow.
Hey, that's something.
All right, well, happy Aviation Day.
There we go.
Thank you.
National Aviation.
National.
Yeah, not just
Aviation Day.
aviation.
So if you want to officially move to adjourn?
Sure. I hear it's been moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned.